This is a Film Stories original podcast.
If you own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles and have an auto warranty about to expire or no warranty coverage at all, listen up. CarShield has a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that covers more parts than ever. Visit carshield.com/audio to find out how you could pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Get your free quote today at carshield.com/audio. That's carshield.com/audio.
We made this.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Xcast. The truth is in here. My name's Kurt North and welcome to our continuing coverage of Season 6. We're a bit hungover this morning after doing a commentary, and joining me are two guests who were with me on that commentary. That was Sarah, Blair and Carl. Carl, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Kurt, good to be with you. I think you need to give the full plug for the commentary, don't you? Where can people find it?
People can find the Dreamland commentary, which was about, what, 6 to 8 of us? Was there? I think there was
6, I think.
Six of us.
Apparently there were two Sarah Blairs. I tweeted out. Thank everybody.
You were having double vision by the time we got done with it.
I could swear there were 2 Sarahs on that recording, honestly. Yeah.
It was me and my doppelganger.
And we weren't even watching this. We were watching Dreamland Part 1 and 2. You can find that on the Patreon. So anyone that wants to come and join us on the Patreon, feel free to do that. Sarah, where can people find the Patreon? There's a question for you, 6 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, God. Wait. It's not fair. I'm not ready. No, it's patreon.com/thexcast. I don't know.
Something like
Don't ask me these hard questions. It's too early.
Yeah,
and I'm hungover. Stop it.
I think if you Google Patreon, the Xcast, you should find it.
Yes. Google has all the answers. Always.
It does have all the answers until your web browser decides to convert to Yahoo and you go, no, what are you doing?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I know. I need to work out how that's happening. But we're here to talk about demons and demon babies today. We're talking terms of endearment. And that was Season 6, Episode 7. It was written by David Mann and directed by Rob Bowman. Sarah, what are your first impressions of this episode?
I like this episode. It's probably not at the top of my Season 6, but Season 6 is so good. I mean, they're pretty much all high on my list overall. I think this is one that I always forget to watch. It's not, I mean, I'll be watching and I'll kind of skip over, but if I'm doing a full rewatch and I watch it, or if I watch for the show, and then I get to the end and I think, wow, why don't I watch this more often? It's a fun episode. There's a lot going on with it. So I enjoyed watching it this time, for sure.
Okay, so Carl, what are your thoughts?
You know, I just feel like I'm the Season 6 grouch of the three of us, because when we did the beginning, I was the least enthusiastic, and similar here, I'm afraid. This is one I always wish was better. This is one, like Sarah, it's not one I rewatch a lot, but when I do, I always think, well, maybe there's more going on here than I remembered, but I don't know. Some nice moments. I just don't get any of the emotion from it. I don't like some of the visuals. Don't really buy the story as a whole. So a couple of moments, actually, which we'll come to, I'm sure, that really take me out of it. So it's interesting, because I think Season 6 did need a dark episode, really, at this point, didn't it? Because we'd had Triangle, the Dreamlands, How to Go Stole Christmas. Rain King hasn't happened, but that's next, isn't it? So I think they needed something that was a bit more, of a piece with what what the older show used to do, but not a home run for me.
So take this out of context with the episode because of the people that are in it. But if you were to throw a Roadrunners in here, is that the kind of thing that you're thinking of?
Yeah.
Would that shake it up?
I think so, because I think, although it's debatable about the whole X-Files light thing, you can't ignore the fact that there's quite an extended run where there are lighter episodes in a show that had never done as many consecutive light episodes like that before. So, yeah, but this is an uneasy mix, isn't it? Because there is some comedy in here. It's not the really great black comedy you get in something like, let's say, Home, for instance. So it is nevertheless very watchable, though, I think. What do you reckon, Kurt?
I think it's watchable. I would agree with what you're both saying, really. I think it's memorable purely for Garbage, for me, because I was a big Garbage fan at the time. And, I've seen Garbage 2 or 3 times in my life. And, I always like a good Shirley Manson listen. So it's always great to hear that. But it is a bit too light for what it needs to be. I don't really... I think that the husband and wives story are a bit too idyllic. They're a bit too, that's, they're happy families kind of thing. And it's very kind of bland in that way. It's very kind of,
we don't want any of that happiness, do we?
No, we don't want happiness. No, you want melancholy at the very least.
More angst.
But yeah. But not a bad watch. I wouldn't say it's a bad episode. I think it's I've watched it twice in the last 3 days, and I've enjoyed watching both of them. And especially in hindsight, when you look to episodes later on, likes of Hungry and stuff like that, where you can see where it is almost like the concept of this like Mulder chasing after the person kind of thing, which is quite nice. I like that kind of point of view of it. But what would you rate out of 10 then, Sarah?
I was trying to think about this yesterday, and my brain keeps saying like a high 7. So like a 7.75 probably.
That would be higher than I would have thought you would have said. Carl, what do you think?
Well, if we're going to 2 decimal places, I'm going to go for a 6.00. A 6. I think, did I say 6 for the beginning? I think I might have done. So... yeah, solid 6. 6 is not an insult from me. I think that,
not 6.66.
No, well, that would be appropriate, of course. Yeah. Like I say,
you've stolen my line.
Sorry.
I think
great minds.
If you make an episode of television that gets a 6 from me, I think that's creditable. But not obviously a standout on a show that's as good as the X-Files.
Yeah, well, I was going to say 6.66.
Good,
but
I'm sorry. Stole your thunder.
I don't think it quite hits a 7, but it's getting close to it. And I would have, if it wasn't a devil episode, it would have been probably a 6.75. But let's knock it down to 6.66.
Ask me again at the end. I probably will change my mind. I'll probably lower it.
We
have 3 of us. If we all just say 6.66, that's like a triad. That's probably, we might summon a demon or something.
Yeah.
I think we've got enough demons after last night's recording. So IMDb scores it 7.9, and that's from 2,614 votes. So it's still getting high ratings in the IMDb scores. That's quite interesting.
Isn't that quite low for season 6 though? Because I think the beginning we said was like 8.2, 8.4, something like that, and that was mid-table. So probably in that second half somewhere for the season. Probably,
yeah. I mean, I think I'm skewed because of Millennium and the scores that Millennium gets, and it's in my head. So 7.9 is actually quite high for season 3 of Millennium.
Right.
So,
right.
But yeah. Right, okay, so shall we dive into the episode then? Shall we go and see what's going on?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so we start with Laura and the Doctor. What do you make to this opening then? As I said, this is kind of already, for me, a scene where it feels very... bland, and it's kind of it just kicks off with like just a general it doesn't there doesn't seem to be as much weight given to the fact that she's been told of these problems of the child, premature baby kind of thing, and What do you make to it, Sarah? What do you think to this opening scene?
I agree. I think it's long for a teaser. There's, more. It doesn't take place all in one spot. There's different locations, and you kind of move through all of this. But like you said, the beginning is really bland, but the end is pretty horrifying. I mean, terrible effects aside.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, it's basically Lord Kinboat coming back, but it's, yeah. And I do appreciate the they tend to always give the husbands and the wives the nicknames. So we get Poopy-Doo here.
Poopy-Doo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But overall, I mean, middle of the road, really, as far as the teaser goes. I think the ending is much more intriguing than the beginning.
Should we start calling Carl Poopy-Doo then, do you think?
Oh dear. I mean, the first thing for this teaser that I noted is, of course, Bruce Campbell. I think he's one of the points of interest for this episode, isn't he? He's one of those cult figures who's definitely got kind of a niche fan base, but I think your mainstream audience wouldn't necessarily know him by name, but I suppose the people who like the Evil Dead films and that kind of thing. Is he a bit too well known, is what I was wondering, because we were talking on the beginning, weren't we, about the change of actors for season 6, and you start to get a few more kind of known quantities in episodes, don't you?
This is the first one I remember that there was a kind of a guest star as such, or it was mentioned in the press, or around the actual show that this person was doing it. I don't necessarily know him from what he's done, but I was aware that he was a well-known actor. So it is interesting how season 6 does do this. I mean, I know How Will It Go Stole Christmas, for example, is a perfect example of that. I didn't know those two actors actually, but it is interesting that they start to use that. I mean, Sarah, for you, do you think it takes it out?
No, because I didn't know him either, and I just vaguely recognized his face. Was he on Briscoe County?
Yeah, I was going to say, that's one of the interesting things, isn't it? Because that show was considered the big hope for Fox the year the X-Files started, wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe they got him on there just because they wanted to promote that or something, like a cross. I don't know. Anyways,
I believe he was also considered for the role of Doggett later on, which is interesting.
Yeah.
That would have been very interesting choice.
Would have been weird having seen him in this episode.
Yeah, there was him and I think it was Lou Diamond Phillips was also up for Doggett as well. So it would have been interesting with either of them actors, really. I'm sure we'll talk about that when we get to season 8.
Yeah.
Can I just point out a couple of other things from this teaser?
Absolutely.
The glowing milk that we see a couple of times in this episode, and I mentioned this on the Hitchcock episode I did with Marlene, but the Alfred Hitchcock film Suspicion with Joan Fontaine and Cary Grant, where the woman starts to think her husband might be trying to poison her. The shots in this episode of him coming up the stairs kind of hark back to that film. I like in this teaser, I like the close-up on the face of Laura, and then we go to the orange light. I like that shot. I think I agree with Sarah about the demon imagery. I think it's a bit much, all the stuff about the demons in this episode, like what a baby looks like, and like I say, this stuff. I don't know, because like later when you go to the blood on Wayne's fingers, I think that's quite effective and quite low-key. So I'm wondering if the teaser could have been quite hard-hitting even without the dream, which is much more kind of out there.
It's almost cartoonish, isn't it? It's almost it's like a super real rather than actually grounded. And I think that's probably where it comes from. It just feels like it's trying to be a bit of thing. I mean, I think David Amann had wanted it to be actually a bit darker. Actually, I think he wanted the original story was that the woman was going to give birth to a snake rather than a child. So that would, and obviously that's something that gets picked up later in the show. Yeah. So it's and it was it's interesting how they kind of like pulled back on that and kind of try to level it more of the comedy aspect and this season 6 thing. Yeah, I think the kind of thought that this fiery pit at the bottom of the bed with with the attack and stuff is maybe a bit much. I do like the little bit of when she bites him, and obviously that comes in later on. I thought that was a good touch. Good. I thought it was nice written touch.
Because I suppose at this point you can think that it's a dream, and you maybe come to think that later when they talk about the Mandrake and all that. But then when you see Betsy later, she sees the same kind of thing, doesn't she? The fire and the demon. So
yeah,
you can't really chalk it off as a hallucination, really, can you?
Not at that point. No. It's unfortunate, really. So when we come out of the teaser, we get Agent Spender, or Brat Boy, as I want to call him. He doesn't exactly endear himself to the X-Files fans at this point, does he? Really?
Well, I do like though the scene in a way, because you see the policeman first, don't you, talking, and you don't see the agent, and it's the kind of classic kind of spiel you hear people say to Mulder. So then the cut to Spender is quite fun, I think, or when he starts to speak, and the way he kind of clearly doesn't care. You know, he's like Deputy Stevens. You know, has no idea what the guy's called. So yeah, I think Spender fobbing him off is good fun. You know, straight in the shredder, all that with the paper. It raises the question, doesn't it, about where's Foley? Of course, like what's she up to? We talked about this again on the beginning, but yeah.
What is she up to? I just need to. Where's she gone? She's gone missing. Don't like it.
Spender feels about the X-Files the way Mulder and Scully feel about the background checks. He's That's true. Super not into it.
Yeah, they could just swap jobs.
It's good. Don't you think it's good to see him though, and at least get some indication of the way he's approaching it? Because
it's good to know there's still at least the X-Files are open, even if he's not investigating anything. He's just shredding everything. At least the unit still exists.
I'm probably a bit more reactionary to it. I just don't buy that he would be just sitting in there in the office just shredding everything that comes in.
He's a weasel, of course he would. He's a little weasel. This is why Scully calls him a little weasel.
It might be more fun to have seen him go to the scene and then decide, well, this is not interesting to me. You know what I mean? Rather than just doing it out of hand. Maybe is that what you mean?
Well, no, I think it's as someone who's like a young FBI agent, even though he doesn't like the work, you'd have thought he would at least file the paperwork or something. You know what I mean? But it's just the fact he just turns around and puts it into the shredder.
Maybe he thinks that his job is he knows that the cigarette smoking man has him assigned there or whatever, and so he knows his job is safe no matter what he does.
Be interesting to kind of get the background on what has cigarette smoking man said to Spender to get him into the X-Files itself, and what is his kind of remit, because we don't really see that. We don't really see why anything beyond the fact that he's been given the X-Files and that's it.
I do think it's kind of a missed opportunity in some ways, and does it mean there's not really enough stakes with some of this stuff in season 6? Because I was thinking it's much later in the episode, but there's a reference to Kirsch, and Kirsch doesn't want you doing this, Mulder. And it's okay, well, it doesn't really feel that much of a threat to me, and
yeah,
they still find all these cases, so Spender running the unit is not that big a threat. But still, I was kind of glad to see just a quick glimpse of him there.
Maybe Foley's not there because she would have wanted to go investigate. She would have made him go. Maybe. Yeah, I think that's good thinking, Sarah. keep thinking like that, and I'll be happy. Thanks. In my hungover, addled, early morning brain, I got one good thought out so far. We'll see how the rest of the episode goes.
So what about Mulder then? Because he spends a lot of time. I mean, we were back in the beginning, and he was putting the X-Files back together, and here he's still doing it. He's having to put shredded paper, even new X-Files back together. I mean, can't think of how long he spent his entire career putting things into some sort of format.
Poor guy. I want to know how I just want to see him dumpster diving for those papers. Where does he hit the trash? Does he disguise himself as a janitor to go down to the office and put on a fake mustache and a little cap or something to sneak into to the office to grab the trash can and secretly.
Unless he's paid off a cleaner or something like that, you know what I mean?
That would be a more likely scenario.
I don't like the fact that he lets the policeman see the shredded paper. You know what I mean? I think it's a bit unprofessional.
I mean, what was the cop be thinking there? Like,
and it's kind of part of my problem with the episode is some of the more funnier moments. Like, it is, I suppose it's supposed to be funny, you know? It kind of sits uneasily with me, but yeah. He seemed very subdued, though. Did you think that? Like, when he interviews the couple and stuff like that, he seems kind of, a bit withdrawn or something. I don't know. I don't know if it was just performance or...
He's already got it figured out. He already knows.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seemed a little off to me.
So I took that as empathy. So that's the way I read it, and that's what I've written on my notes. But within that conversation that he has with Laura, and so talking about the nightmare, and it was some kind of monster of horns and tails. I think if this would have been in season 5, I think they would have pushed that a bit more. I think it might have fitted in season 5's mold, from what you're saying, Carl.
You mean when he was going through the skeptical arc and stuff? Yeah. I think it may be more obvious at that point. But you mentioned, Sarah, about him knowing. It's interesting straight away. That one of the lines where Wayne says, "Oh, it's Mr. Winesider. Oh, it's Wayne," and then Mulder starts going, "Yeah, sure, mind your phone, Wayne."
Mm-hmm.
And
that point, that point, you're like, yeah, he knows something.
Yeah,
he's
already
not the right
decided.
Kind of
guy. Yeah, and I do I like the scene where he's interviewing Laura. I think she's believably upset and confused. I liked the actress who played her, and I think I appreciate that they handled it in a sensitive way, because I mean, it's a very tragic, the death of a child, especially so late term, is a really tragic thing if you think about it. And it's, she definitely wanted her child, but she seems very confused about what happened, rightfully so. I mean, and I like that she told the truth from the beginning, even though it sounds completely bonkers. A demon stole my baby. Like, who's gonna believe that? Like, but Mulder will. Yeah. Mulder will believe it, but nobody else. That has to be a really horrific situation to find yourself in as a new mother, with all the expectations and hopes that come with that. It's I
mean, what about the difficult conversation that the kind of alluding to, that it's not a in inverted commas normal baby, because there's an underlying aspect here of the fact that the before the child's born it's deformed, and there might be a bit of an undercurrent there. I mean, what do you make to the kind of the story that they're kind of telling through that way?
Well, I sort of think that it's interesting on some level, and as the episode proceeds, we get some idea of him as kind of an immigrant and all this. We hear about his history in Czechoslovakia. So the idea of kind of assimilating and all that is potentially interesting, but I'm not sure it ever kind of resonates with me like it should, to be honest. I think because I don't really... The whole thing about him being a demon is not believable enough to me, because I don't like the look of the demon. I don't understand how he takes human form. I don't really know how it all works, and they never try to really explain it. So I think for that reason, a lot of the stuff here doesn't really come together for me. Okay. Sorry.
Sarah, if Tom Ellis was in this role, would it be a bit more understandable?
Oh my God, yes. You know how I love the devil. No, that would have been fun. That would have been a really fun episode. I think he would have played up the humor a little bit more. He's really good with the comedy. That would have been fun.
Which show is this?
Lucifer.
Yeah. It's
never seen it.
He's a bit more charismatic.
You should watch it, Carl. It's good.
Do we get it over here, Kurt? I don't know if we do.
We do. It's on Netflix now. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah,
Kurt and I watched together. It's good stuff.
It's great stuff.
It is.
But poor Scully, she's she's doing background checks, and this is probably one of my favourite parts of the episode, actually, when Mulder does call, and she is so relieved to actually have the phone call from him. I don't think you really see that much relief from Scully when Mulder calls ever, and I think it's just wonderful. Well, I think Gillian plays it really well here.
I don't like it. I don't like it. No, because this is where they're going too on the nose with the comedy for this kind of episode, I think. And I don't think the guy looks like enough of a stoner to make the joke really work either. You know, when she's like saying, have you ever... I suppose he's supposed to, like longer hair and the beard and all that. I suppose they could have pushed that even further in terms of comedy, but I don't know. I suppose you do get the classic Mulder line, don't you, when he rings her? This is a classic case of demon fetal harvest, which I think there's a gif of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That gif I don't think will ever disappear. That's always one that's like constantly
the problem
there.
is, how is the baby monitor, because of course Wayne's listening in, how is the baby monitor picking up Scully's voice? That's really sloppy to me, and it distracts me every time, because he can hear Mulder, and that's fair enough, because Mulder's speaking into the phone. He shouldn't be able to hear what Scully is saying, should he?
No, we don't. Mulder's not deaf. he doesn't speak. Well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I
Yeah.
didn't think
Bugs
about
me every
that.
time.
Did you take it as relief or exasperation? I took it as exasperation that he's calling. You know, you're calling from Rona. That's 4 hours away. He's supposed to be there with her. And she's just like, oh, again, with the X-Files.
I took it as relief.
I took it as relief to have had a distraction from, you know, the assignment, which he probably wasn't that interested in.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Maybe both. I don't know.
A little bit of both. Maybe exasperation at first, like, why are you not here? You're supposed to be here. And then at least he's on an X-File. But now she's got to deal with Kirsch and everything. She knows what's coming. Mulder's just trouble. He's her trouble, but that's okay. She loves him anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing with this scene as well is that Mulder says that Spender's unconscionable here, and I think that's an interesting point actually, because he's so blasé about something when there's real people's lives that are suffering and stuff like that. I think it's an interesting comment that he makes there, because that feels to me it's not just about the X-Files, it's about the people.
Yeah, and it's not professional, isn't it, to be an investigator and to take this approach. So he's got a point.
Yeah. I did appreciate that she says she watched Rosemary's Baby on cable the other day. For several reasons, because I love the idea of Scully sitting around in her apartment watching Rosemary's Baby. First of all, that's hilarious. Secondly, on cable. Do you remember cable? That was so fun.
Did we get cable in the same way as they did in the States, Kurt? We had satellite TV.
Really?
Yeah,
because you've got like public broadcast stations and local. We just had 5 channels, and then Sky came along, so it was like satellite channels, and that was it.
Well,
really.
I remember even when there were fewer than 5, don't you? Like when it was just 1, 2, 3, 4.
I remember when Channel 5 came to air. It was so much
quality on that show. So
much quality on the show, and not everyone could get it originally.
That's
because
true.
the
I forgot about that.
Yeah, only certain areas could get Channel 5. Those were the days. Those were and the days when TV used to finish at 10 o'clock at night as well. There wasn't anything on TV after 10 o'clock at night.
It was good though when you could speak to people and you could say, like, did you watch that show last night? And you could have a reasonable expectation that they would know what you were talking about. They may well have watched it. Whereas these days, there's just so much stuff, isn't there? You can't really have those kind of conversations very often. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, we had the same with The Crown, didn't we? Because you two have both watched all the episodes before I got to the final one. I watched the first 4 or 5 and then was delayed for a bit, so I couldn't really speak to you about that. So it's whereas in the past that would have been a weekly show, and it would have been sit down in front of the TV and watch it, and then talk about it the following morning in the office or wherever we may well have been. So
I do like what Sarah said about Scully watching Rosemary's Baby, and it does seem like she is a bit of a horror fan, doesn't it? Because I can't remember which episode it is, but we hear in an early episode that The Exorcist is one of her favourite films, don't we? So it all kind of fits. I like it.
It's interesting that, especially with all the stuff that she goes through, and she still watches stuff like that. It's like you'd think you'd want to sort of watch something that's a little more lighthearted, wouldn't you? But
less like work. But maybe that's why she loves Mulder so much and why she enjoys the X-Files. Maybe she's into that kind of thing. I mean, in Quagmire, she talks about being into the monsters as a kid. So, and then she grew up and became a scientist. But that doesn't mean that she gave up on her hobbies necessarily.
What do you think to the chanting music then? Because there's a bit of chanting around the incinerator when he's at the incinerator. Is that something that you thought was a good choice for Mark Snow to do?
Yeah, I did. This is one aspect of the episode I did appreciate, and he obviously returns to that music at various points. I just felt it was suitably atmospheric. It sounded kind of similar to some cues from earlier episodes. I'm thinking maybe... I'm not sure if the Calasari, maybe, but... Yeah,
the Hand of Lights, maybe.
Some of like first season, first and second season.
So I definitely thought it was appropriate. Did you, Sarah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing I did note also is she's looking for her nightgown that she wore when this horrific thing happened. Several reasons I would have thrown that thing out. Like, blood is really tough to get out. You got to use the hydrogen peroxide on it. It's a pain. And two, I mean, I would not want to wear that nightgown again because it would just remind me of what happened. I would just go, she needs a new nightgown, the poor girl. Does she not have another one like that? That stood out to me, that she would be wanting and needing to wear the nightgown again. She would have washed it at least and known where it was if she was looking to wear it again to go to bed.
Well, thank you for that scientific knowledge of how to get blood out of stuff.
But no, I did like the music. Yeah, I liked it. And I like how this episode keeps balancing the horror and the humor. It reminded me of Chinga in that way, because you've got Mulder and Scully having their humorous conversations along with the horrific, scary stuff. And so that kind of the tone reminded me of Chinga a little bit here.
Well, or even an episode like Home in some ways where, you've got horrible stuff about dead children and all of that. And they're still cracking wise for a lot of the kind of, investigation. I didn't enjoy it as much as in that episode, though, to be fair. But hey, not every episode can be as great as Home, can it, of course?
No. It's interesting you should say that, because Millennium gets a lot of stick for being the opposite of having no humour in the first season. And it's a difficult balance to weigh, because Millennium dealt with so many deep and dark and horrible things. And when this was airing in season 6, I think season 3 was happening over in Millennium, and they kind of took a lot of the aspects of the X-Files in season 3 compared to what season 6 is doing. So it's interesting that that this whole balance with a bit of frivolity or humor mixing with the horror, and it seems like it's a difficult balance to get right. And as you say, Home potentially gets that right. This one.
Do you think that demon that we see here? Do you think that he would fit on Millennium in some ways? But he almost reminds me a bit of the demons you see in the coffee shop in that episode, the Darren Morgan episode. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think he would. He's not dark enough. I think. But you're right. I think somehow Satan got behind me. He would fit in more in that mold than anything else. So when we come out for the next morning, Mulder's been sleeping in his car. That I always remember this. I just remembered this today. That I once went to a festival and we were playing. My band were playing, and I went to sleep in the back of my boot of the car. And I woke up and I had the most horrific cramp I've ever had in my life. And I couldn't get out the car to stretch it. It was the most, I was in pain for about a week. So I know what sleeping in a car's like. But it is a nice touch that, it's showcasing Mulder's like, he's willing to go to the ends to like keep on top of this case, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think he was sleeping in the car because he didn't want to pay for the hotel and have to requisition he didn't want to check in and have a trail, or because he was staking out the house?
That's a good point.
Just fell asleep. I was wondering about that.
I took it more that he just didn't want to let Wayne out of his sight in some ways. But that's an interesting point. He might want to keep it off the books. But I just feel like if he wanted to get a hotel, he would put it in his own, paying cash or something. I don't know.
But Mulder doesn't tip. He's the cheapest cheapest cheap guy. Like, he's not going to pay for a hotel. You know, I feel like that would be within care. He tips 11 cents and 13 cents. Like, that's not.
Bad blood just came rushing through my mind at that point.
I was thinking about Dreamland with the penny and the
13.
dime. Keep the change.
There's 13.
Yeah.
or even the followers.
So I feel like he would, if he had the choice to pay for a hotel or not, like, I don't think he would. I feel like that would be, you know, very Mulder. Also, can we go back really quick just to the job jar? I felt like that was very in character for an aggrieved father who had just lost a child to be out of sorts and raking leaves in the middle of the night.
As a distraction.
Because people do weird. Yeah. I liked that scene.
I think we'll come to Wayne's actual, his processing towards the end of the episode as well, because it does have a twist at the end.
I don't like his demon eyes. You know, when we see his demon eyes, it's all a bit too obvious for me. Sorry.
Well, I've got this problem with Betsy's demon's eyes, because her eyes are actually more scarier than the demon eyes are.
Yeah.
Quite piercing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It always takes me back, those eyes. It's like, whoa, they are strong. And then when the demon eyes comes on, it's like, Yeah,
I thought they were contacts. I was like, those are her demon eyes, right? Because I couldn't remember. And no, they're not. Like, they're much less frightening, actually. I would have liked to have had more of her, but I think they kept her out on purpose because of the ending. But I think it would have been a better build if she had come in a little bit sooner and you had more time with her and him together in their interactions.
I suppose there's a couple of attempts in this episode to kind of put a bit of a twist on things and, you know, reveal something. I thought it was interesting what Scully said when she calls about, you know, all this stuff about the third trimester abortions and you've got to arrest her and all that. I don't know. What do you think? It was a bit too, I don't know if it's simplistic maybe, that she suspects the mother. Mulder obviously has decided it's the father. I suppose it works to have that kind of opposition, doesn't it? They're looking in different ways.
It works, but I think you're right. It feels like it's too simplified. There's no real depth, or there's no grey area. It's kind of a black and white story, and it wouldn't necessarily come out like that. But I suppose as part of the story, I can see why they did it. But it would have been nice to have a bit more nuance to the actual story, rather than just it is one thing or the other.
I did appreciate that she warned him to be sensitive about it, but I don't think that was enough. Like you said, it's too simple. And I don't know why Scully would automatically assume the mother did it on purpose. I think knowing herbs and medical stuff, I feel like as a woman, she should have given her the benefit of a doubt instead of just assuming she did it on purpose, especially because she says the doctor said the mother was not as upset about it as the father, in which case, if the father was so upset about it, why wouldn't it even be a possibility that he might have put something in her drink? You know, she just assumes that she did it on purpose, but that's not necessarily, there's more to it. Like you said, it's oversimplified, but that bothered me a lot.
I think that's a good point. I agree. What
do you think of the succinct way that we are getting an idea that Wayne is a devil by Mulder's drawing?
The horns on the discreet bony deformities was the phrase, wasn't it? Yeah.
If there's a way to re-emphasize something, that definitely is a way of re-emphasizing it.
He does like to draw on stuff, doesn't he? I think Patient X, when he's kind of drawing on his own face and stuff, isn't he, in the newspaper? So it kind of fits. And then, of course, he uses the phrase devil. I'd hate like the devil for that to happen as well to Wayne, which kind of reminded me of something like Kitson Nagari, where he starts talking about the true blue stuff, you know. And
it reminded me of Tombs. Yeah. A lot of this reminds me of Tombs, where he's, stalking and going after the Norwegian elk hounds.
It is always fun to see him do that, though. I like that. I think you mentioned Hungry already, Kurt, but the whole Rob Roberts thing in that episode as well. It's fun. It's just fun.
Yeah, and SR 819 as well, where he's obviously following Skinner around a little bit, which is interesting how he does that. And obviously, this is something that that happens quite a bit in this one, and we're about to get to the car chasing scene in a moment. But
can I give a shout out to Mulder's scruff really quick, because that was delightful. His scruff, because he hasn't shaved.
Oh, okay.
He spent the night in the car and he didn't shave, so he's a little bit scruffy.
Bit 5 o'clock shadow.
Yeah, carrying the fiber out. At least we know everybody's well regulated. I appreciate that he notices the fiber everywhere, especially like in Skinner's apartment. He's like, well, at least we know he's all right.
Forgot about that. Yeah.
That's concerned. Did you see what a giant
It was big.
box of it was huge. Anyways. So much fiber. Maybe demons need more fiber. I don't know.
Potentially.
It's kind of neat, isn't it? The fact that, because obviously Wayne goes on to like convince Laura about, what he said has happened and all that. So you have kind of a nice thing where Mulder kind of knows what's going on, and Wayne has convinced the other people who matter that something else is going on. So that was kind of neat.
And for me, I think that's probably the best part of the episode is when you really see the true evil come out, because the way he's making Laura believe that it's all her fault, and that really is affecting. I think that it's a really great scene, because it's like it is the full method of true evil, and whether or not it be domestic abuse or whatever it may be. In any case, it's the fact that people just believe there's no way out, and this one in particular is kind of like making her believe something that's not even anything to do with her. It's all him, but it is quite horrific in that way.
And how offhand he was like, yeah, you were just, and he just like says the Zazas, just completely like just rolls off his tongue like it's nothing. Summoning the gate, opening the gates of hell. That's what that means. I was
wondering if the words had any actual meaning. Yeah. Open
the gates of hell. That's what it means.
I think it's from an English cultist. I think.
Who is it?
From what I was reading,
not Aleister Crowley.
It is Aleister Crowley. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. What about the brother then? Let's talk about the cop. What do you make to his story in this right up to the end, really? Because obviously he's quite pivotal in Wayne's demise. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they paved the way for it well enough, I think, with the early scenes, and the actor fits the role quite well. I think the kind of small town. I can't remember if he's a sheriff, is he, or a cop, or I can't remember what his exact rank is. But yeah, I think he's suitably cast. I think they did enough to kind of suggest, to kind of plant the seeds for what comes at the end, to make it make sense too. So I had no qualms about that aspect of the episode, really.
There was one little bit where, she's talking, we're talking about the part where they're sitting at the table and he has to arrest her and all that. I feel like I liked that he was sympathetic to her as much as a brother could be. But I mean, this is his niece or nephew that was just killed also. And I feel like I don't know that he would have necessarily believed that she actually did it still. I think that they should have had, one little line to say, I'm still with you. I'm still on your side. But as required by law and my job, I have to do this, and I'm really sorry about it. Like, I don't want to, but we have to go through the motions.
That's a fair point, I think. It probably speaks to the sense of the episode, doesn't really get under the skin of a lot of these dynamics, like, fully. It establishes these things quite briskly and, like I say, without really getting under the surface of it, I think.
And just to go back a little bit to what Kurt said earlier about just how evil Wayne is to convince Laura about all this stuff, when she's confessing or whatever, I guess you would call that a confession, I don't know. But she says, she said, I thought it was something that I did wrong and that this was my punishment for it. But I don't know what I did, and that, I guess, like, that's something that, of course she would feel guilty about that, but she's still confused and doesn't really know how, because she knows she didn't do anything, but he's convinced her that she did. And so now she does think that she did something wrong, which is totally evil, like you said. Like, it just really sucks that he's got her convinced. And so she's trying to reason this out, and she's blaming herself, which is realistic, but it sucks, just as a circumstance. Yeah. It's not fair to her at all.
Yeah, definitely. I think what you're saying with the kind of brushing over it, that they do spend, it's effective, but they balance it with the focus on Mulder during that scene where the brother's speaking to her, because Mulder's like kind of looking at them, then looking at Wayne, and you can see that the wheels turning in his head about what he's going to do and how he's going to do it, which obviously inevitably leads us to the traffic lights and Mulder's obsession at this point, which obviously they've got Garbage playing, Only Happy When It Rains, so using some popular music there, and just the whole aspect of just Mulder being relentless with Wayne at this point is the kind of the turning of the episode. In some ways, it kind of really kind of puts into gear at this point, doesn't it? Really.
And I did like that they let Mulder have that line where he doesn't whisper, but it's like that low, "I know what you did." Like, he's onto him, and he really hates him, and he knows what he is, which I really like about Mulder. He's not going to let him get away with this.
I liked that. I think this driving scene, when it starts, though, it doesn't really feel like the X-Files to me. When the car slams across the road and we got the pop music and all of that. But I think when Mulder turns up to tail him, that's good stuff. And like you mentioned earlier, Sarah, it does remind me of Tombs. And it's kind of fun to see a retread of that, I think. So, yeah. Did you feel like Betsy, in the first couple of scenes, did you find her kind of nice and non-suspicious enough, do you think?
I think so, yeah. I think, I think potentially maybe that's why they went with the kind of idyllic kind of family home with him just jumping between two households, that it's trying to keep you off footing, thinking, oh, this is like, I know he's obviously cheating and working between two households, but this idea that both lives seem to be perfect and they just need this child to make it a full family and stuff. And it's, I think she delivers it well enough to make me think it's a nice relationship in that way.
It must be, the fact that he's running two marriages at once. That must be exhausting, mustn't it? And this is one of the reasons why I don't really buy it, because if he had just had a girlfriend or something, I could believe it a bit more that he's able to split his time between the two households. I'm sure maybe there are some people who have done this, and have carried it off, but it must be a big ask, splitting your time.
Well, Laura also doesn't even mention him being gone at all. Much. She doesn't, it's not
he's
even
out of town half the time.
You don't even, right. It doesn't even come up at all, which I think would have been nice if they would have dropped that in somewhere in that whole, but I guess they did it because they wanted it to be a surprise. But even just an offhand remark, I'm worried about you going out of town next week, or, whatever.
I suppose can we assume that he must have some level of travel? Well, we see him at work, don't we, when he goes to the woman's house and stuff. But
I think it's interesting that both demons have their base homes. Like, I loved his and how it was very Addams Family and classically Gothic looking Victorian house. And he apparently has been doing this for a while. And then Betsy's got her home base.
Well, she must have had that house for a while, mustn't she? Because they say that she had the 4 normal babies buried later. Mm-hmm. So she presumably lived there before she was married to Wayne, or was with Wayne.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. So
they're both doing the same thing from their own respective houses, which I thought was interesting.
And it is interesting that, they don't realise, it's like, how much does she know compared to him? Because he's obviously oblivious to the fact that who she is. Mm-hmm. How much do you think that she knew of him?
I feel like she knew something. Well, because she's...
Well, she wanted a demon baby, so presumably she was looking for a
She's
demon
gone
man.
out to get him.
I don't know.
Yeah, she... she seemed much less innocent than Laura. Let's say that. I think she seemed more willing to put up with his bullshit to get what she wanted.
Ends justify the means.
Yeah, because, you know, she was much less interested in having him come to the appointment. I mean, rightfully so, because she knew, like, if it was a demon baby, it would be something, and she didn't want him to know about that, probably, because she, you know, whether she knows he was a demon or not, she would probably, you know, not want him to know about the demon baby.
If she wasn't aware that he was a demon, what are the odds that those two demons would find each other? You know, or how many demons are there in the United States who are, you know, who could potentially be spawning like this?
Well, let me just check my registry of demons.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
Well, of course, that woman sees the woman he takes the blood from. She sees the bumps on the back of his neck and all that, doesn't she? So all the demon physiognomy and stuff in this episode, I felt was a bit simplistic.
Well, that brings me to the next point, because obviously Mulder is being such a, you know, relentless with his pursuing of Wayne, that Wayne has to change tact and go to this house. But it gives Wayne the opportunity to really speak to somebody who's not involved, and, you know, get his story out about the fact that he loves kids and the fact he's got a baby on his way. And I think that was a nice scene, that actually to be able to get into Wayne's insight. And it's something that obviously the X-Files starts to do, or has done, is to try and humanize the antagonist of the piece, really. And this is another case in point where they're trying to humanize the culprit as such.
Yeah, I mean, all the stuff where he talks about her perfect boys and all of that, and the normality of them, and I suppose so. I don't really ever buy any of the pathos about him, because you can't get away from the fact he's been basically murdering babies. So yeah, it was too much of an ask for me to kind of get on his side.
But it also goes to the question. Yeah, but it also goes to the question as well, that when you get into the deeper aspects of the fact that the fine young boys are all kind of white, blonde haired, and he starts talking about two cells that can go wrong. You know, that's why I'm thinking it's there's a bit more of a point to just not only to try and humanize him a little bit, but there's also an undercurrent of, you know, having that perfect child. And I think it's maybe a bit too much.
Well, why does he crave normalcy so much? Like, what is it about having demon children that is so off-putting to him, you know? Because we just don't know enough about the culture of being a demon from this episode. I feel like...
You always want what you can't have. I mean, he can make a demon baby, but he doesn't want demons. He's got plenty of demons in hell, probably. He wants a normal baby, because he can't have that.
I just struggle to comprehend, like, what the family dynamics of having a demon family would be like and all of that. So it just, I don't know. I'm too harsh. Sorry, guys. I don't know.
So what you're basically saying is you want a spin-off show?
Absolutely
with
not,
Wayne,
but
you know,
I just I don't know. Did you feel like it was all a bit too kind of like paint by numbers, like the way the demon looked, the way, you know, I don't know, just no, didn't buy it. Sorry.
Oh, he woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. No, I'm alluding to the fact that it just seems like the striving for normality is maybe the point. You know, the fact that it's the fact that, you know, it is what it is, and they talk about the trimester and abortion and all that kind of thing. And is there an undercurrent of you know, the fact of, you know, of dealing with something that is abnormal in a normal pregnancy? And the fact that he's striving to it, and is that the evil? The fact that, you know, that he is killing these kids because they are, in inverted commas, not normal.
Yeah.
So, but I can see why they're doing it, because it just jumps out at me when he starts talking about the two cells that can go wrong. That seems to be just a comment that just jumps straight out at me. Laura starts to kind of figure this out now. So we mentioned about Laura. I think that the actress that plays her does really a good job, and I think, Sarah, you alluded to that before. But when she starts to realise, and obviously in the jail cell, she pulls back the shirt just to reveal the abnormalities that Carl's so in love with.
Well, she bit him too.
Yeah.
She found the bite. Yeah.
What do you think to the way that Laura kind of like is starting to put the pieces together here, because she actively goes looking for that bite, doesn't she?
I wrote down, Wayne's a really shitty demon. That's what I wrote in my notes. He's like really bad at this. But it's all falling apart. And I like that she's smart enough to figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah, because in the earlier scene, like I said, it's kind of neat that Mulder sees what's going on, but Scully and Laura and whoever don't see it. But I do like the fact that later she's had a chance to think about it, and she kind of gets some, figures out what's going on. I enjoyed that.
It makes her less of a victim too, which I appreciate. That she can figure it out on her own. And
what was going on in this scene? What was going on in this scene with like the life force or whatever that he was able to inhale from her? I didn't like that effect.
That kind of just got thrown in, didn't it? For
what are his powers? Like, what can he do? What are the limits of it? Etc. Etc. I need answers.
Well, you'll find that in the Wayne show. Carl told you. True.
Is this a spin-off of the Davy Train? The Wayne show. We're going to have a Davy Train crossover with the Wayne show where they all go on a demon train.
But Sarah, what do you think to that, though? What do you think the actual premise of that he can take her life force that way, and he can also give it, obviously, at the end as well?
Well, as we've established, the world building kind of sucks here. But as far as, the rules and the laws, I think it would have been a much stronger episode if we had had a little bit more of how things work and why. That's what I'm always interested in, is the why. But I think it was here, without any context, it was very convenient. It was a convenient way to put her off for a little while. So yeah, it was more of a plot device, I think, here than something useful or interesting. He got all.
Well, he's not very good at it, though, is he?
No.
Oh, yeah,
really.
That's why I wrote down he's such a shitty demon. He's so
and also
sad.
how surprised he is when she doesn't die. He could have been a bit more incognito about that, couldn't he? He's like, what?
And why? Why was she different? Because apparently this is something he's done before. Because he was expecting her to die.
Because he loves her. Because he loves her.
True love.
Maybe
Anyways,
he's kind of a bit soft. Yeah. He's middle-aged in love.
He's truly in love.
Past his peak as a demon, maybe.
So here's a question for you, Sarah. So if your husband decided to say that he's coming home in 5 minutes and turns up like 3 days later, would you when he comes back in, would you say that was a long 5 minutes?
Yeah, I mean,
I think that used to happen a lot more in the old days, though, before like mobile phones and stuff. Like I used to work with a guy who, he's dead now, sadly, but he told me the story about how he just got married to his wife, and he went out one day to get milk, and then he walked past a bus stop, and he saw his mate at the bus stop. He called him over, and then, let's go into town, and he just went off on this bender. And then came back late the following day. And of course, in the old days, you couldn't get in touch with somebody. He was like, if they weren't at home, that was it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it could happen.
And especially if he's, gone a lot anyway, she probably would have just assumed something, because she was on the phone when he was with Mulder, and she's like, who are you talking to? And, so. Yeah. And honestly, as far as Betsy goes, she probably was just glad he was not there. She just wants she doesn't care about him. She just wants the baby. She just wants her demon baby.
Well, when she's in the looking for the sonogram, my only note in this one is Betsy's eyes. Mm-hmm. So that's all I've got for that, because they just pierce at me. It's amazing. But we do find out that the deformities are there, that Wayne's a bit upset about that. And And then when we come back to Mulder, and Scully says, "Mulder, it's me," which is obviously the classic line. If we were still drinking, we'd probably take a drink. Yeah, but it's not necessarily alcohol this time, so it's just juice for me.
Coffee.
And that's your cover story, remember? And the fact that Mulder is actually doing a background check, which I like. And that happens quite a lot in season 6, actually, where he is actually using this background check as a way of like investigating, which is a nice touch during season 6. He's using the tools that are available to him.
Mm-hmm. I like that Gordy. What did you think of the name Gordy Boitano? I want to know where they got that name. That was hilarious. Also, this line here, Mulder, I was screaming at my laptop when I was watching. I was screaming at this, and Mulder goes, "I don't know why I'm not a psychologist."
Yeah, I did that.
Mulder!
This is the main... that's the first thing we ever learn about Mulder, isn't it, basically? He's an Oxford-educated psychologist.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Too sloppy. And I wonder how that crept through, because it's not just that it was written in the script, it's that nobody else picked up on it, through to you would hopefully David Duchovny would be like the backstop who would say, "I'm not saying that."
Yeah. Right?
Hang on a second. I am a psychologist.
Yeah.
This is your character, man. Come on. You've been playing it for 6 years.
What do you think it means? Do you think it means that he's not a practicing... I'm trying to rationalise it, but I just think it's a sloppy moment, really. But.
I did think that he is not a practicing... Like, maybe he doesn't have his medical... Because I think... I always get them mixed up. Psychiatrist is the doctor who is able to prescribe a medication. You have to have a doctorate to be a psychiatrist. Psychologist is different. You don't have to have a medical license to practice psychology. But he's an Oxford-educated psychologist who is a profiler. This is, can I curse again? Because, do your fucking job, man. This is what you do. Seriously. Yeah. This is what you went to school for. You went to freaking Oxford to become a psychologist. You're a psychologist if you have an Oxford degree in psychology.
It distracts me every time I see this episode, and I can forgive certain things that they get wrong or that don't track between episodes, but this seems different to me because it's fundamental to this character's backstory,
Yeah. Well, he also says, "I don't know why," but he's a profiler. That is his literal job, to know why.
Yeah. And a genius profiler at that, supposedly.
Yeah. With a photographic memory.
Yeah. Mulder, come on.
I'm afraid I'm a bit concerned that he's not afraid that he's dealing with a demon who obviously can play with fire as well.
Yes, but I think he's supposed to have cured his fear of fire, isn't he, in that episode in season 1? So,
oh yes, of course, yeah, because that's how easy it is.
Well, when you're a psychologist, apparently you can cure your own phobias in one episode.
Okay, so they put an APB out for the brother-in-law. He's not coming back here. Obviously, Mulder's kind of getting to this point now where. We're finding the bodies and realizing the true nature of what he is and who he is. And Mulder's talking about the biological imperative that he needs to succeed. And then Mulder gives us the actual story itself, doesn't he? Because he says that the demon, he just wants a normal child. So he's directly referring to the audience there, giving us the straight-laced, this is what the story's about. So it's, I always feel that's a bit on the nose, personally.
Well, it's that balancing line between you've got how much do you spell things out for people? If you don't spell out enough, do you take people along? And quite often they'll put in an exchange like that to kind of solidify what they're driving at, won't they? So I don't know, Sarah, as a writer, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, at this point in the episode, I think you have to give something, and I don't know that I would have necessarily spelled it out exactly like that, but you've got to give a little bit of something. I
suppose we've already had Wayne.
The audience.
We've already had Wayne saying the stuff with that woman about the perfect children and all of that. So maybe we knew it all already. To be fair,
right? And I mean, you have to trust your audience. It is a balance, like you said, that you have to trust your audience to figure it out. But I don't know. It's clear. I mean, it's clearly not high end episode here we're dealing with. But I think it was fine.
Yeah.
So we're in the car. Mulder and Scully are talking, and Betsy turns up.
Oh, yeah.
Which is an effective scene. I think it works quite well. And it brings her into the story more, with obviously bringing Mulder and Scully into it. And obviously, after that, we then start talking about going to see, as we get towards the end of the episode, going to see what Wayne is digging up. And the inevitable twist comes in as we end up towards the back end of the episode. So this back end part, Sarah, what do you think?
Are we on the part where he tries to take his? Has she drank the milk yet? Or
Wayne, what you doing? Wayne, what you doing? Maybe you didn't hear me, Wayne. That bit. So what do you make to that, actually? Because that was just slightly before what I was just saying.
I thought it was a nice way to bring it in, the twist, and because that's when you know that she knows, but he doesn't know about her. So he thinks he's like pulling one over on her again. He's just like, oh, not again. I gotta go kill another baby. Gosh. Yeah. And so I liked that where she grabs him and she just like speaks to him and she knows, and then you see his human face instead. I thought that was a nice twist.
Yeah, kind of. I think there's a couple of points in this episode, and that's one of them that seemed kind of like a nice sort of Twilight Zone-esque twist in some ways. And I just don't like all the imagery with the fire and all of that. So
it's been a while since I've seen Rosemary's Baby. Is that part? I can't remember.
Well, I remember it being
Do they have the fire in it?
I suppose maybe it wasn't quite as... It was much more effective, I think, than whatever we see here. But it's been a while for me too.
Weird lighting.
Yeah.
I mean, you could take the fact that she has still been drugged, even though it's not has a major effect on her. So it could still have a bit of dream logic in there, but I don't think it's effective as much as it could have been.
However, I did like, you were talking a bit about the subsequent scenes, Kurt, and like Mulder and Scully raiding the house and all of that. I thought was suitably kind of dark and moody. I think there's a moment from this episode which you see still images of quite a lot. It's with Mulder and Scully kind of with their guns drawn and that kind of thing.
Hold on, Scully.
Yeah.
And he pulls that anyway.
The film on the TV, by the way, I was curious about what that was. I noticed it was Gregory Peck. Apparently the film is The Man in the Grey Flannel Suit from 1956, which I haven't seen. It's about a World War II veteran trying to balance his marriage and family life with the demands of a new job. So I don't know if that was what they were kind of hinting at, the demands of marriage. Maybe there's some kind of overlap with the story here, and I don't know. Haven't seen the film. Would be curious if anyone listening has seen it, if they know. Because they normally choose that thing for a kind of... They normally would choose something like that for a reason, I suppose.
Like the Invisible Man on Detour. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was wondering about it, but I wasn't curious enough to Google it. I was like, tired.
Yeah, especially when watching it just before we come in on air with the hangover. It's like, no, I'll let Carl do that.
I don't have that excuse. I watched yesterday before we drank. That's okay. I looked up the demon stuff. That was fine.
You guys owe me.
That was enough.
You owe me big time.
So he's not burying anything; he's digging it up, and the revelation that there's babies in the ground, as Carl alluded to earlier in the episode, and then the deputy actually shoots Wayne. So was that a decent shock? No,
it made me mad.
Sarah's shaking her head. Made you mad?
I mean, it was a good shock because it was too convenient. Like they didn't want him to say the answer and give it away. And so they shot him, and then the guy goes and gets mad about it. He's like, well, I'm going to beat the truth out of him. You shouldn't have shot him then. If you want the truth, don't shoot him. He wasn't even doing anything, and he just walked up and shot him for no reason. Like and I'm glad that Mulder mentioned, you're in enough trouble as it is, because he shot an unarmed man that wasn't even doing anything. He wasn't a threat or anything. He just walked up and shot him.
It was quite convenient, wasn't it, to be fair? My main issue was kind of like I said already, but it's impossible for me to overlook how unethical Wayne's actions have been, which means that I'm too sad about anything that happens to him later, to be honest. I was wondering, so I'm assuming he voluntarily gives his life force back to Laura in the hospital. Is that how you guys took it as well? Which are kind of a nice idea.
Yeah, I took it as that he actually did love her, because he never loved Betsy, but I think there's affinity for Laura, and he actually had grew to love her. I think probably to begin with, in the relationship, it seems like it was a means to an end, but he did end up caring for her, and I think he's come round to realising that at the end, and that's the way I took that.
Do you think things would have been different if he had just come clean with her at the beginning? Like, he loved her so much, he would have just been like, listen, Laura, I'm a demon, and I'm going to have a normal baby. Let's figure out a way to make this happen.
Well, they could have adopted.
You think she would have been on board?
Yeah.
I mean...
Nothing wrong with adopting children.
But then it wouldn't have been his demon seed. He wants it to be his.
Yeah.
He wants to make a normal baby.
It's biological imperative.
It's true.
Spread your demon seed around, man.
You know.
That's a whole other kettle of fish.
Sow your wild demon oats before you settle down. Didn't like the demon baby. We see the demon baby's arm, don't we, with Betsy at the end. Didn't like that. Didn't like her eyes. Just all the demon imagery. It was not sharp enough for me.
And for an episode about demons, it's probably quite a bad thing for you. And well, that pretty much brings us to the end, really. I mean, we get to, I'd say, given the life force and the fact that Maud is saying it's no coincidence that she ran into us, she hoodwinked them, and then Betsy drives off into the wilderness and continues on with her demon baby. So that's a pretty typical X-File way to go out. I know obviously that the iconography of it is a bit, not the best, but it does leave it open-ended, doesn't it? And we don't see Betsy again, luckily. But I wonder what that demon baby's doing right now. It'd be 20-odd-year-old now. So.
I mean, I was never clamouring for a sequel to Terms of Endearment necessarily, but I think maybe in a comic book or something, you could do something quite interesting with a sequel to this story, maybe. You could maybe, on the page, maybe the imagery would come to life a bit better. So yeah, no, like I say, good classic sort of, unresolved ending, I think.
So any final thoughts before we jump into the mailbag?
Do we get garbage again at the end? We do, don't we? As we go into the final round?
We do get garbage at the end, yeah, we do, yeah. She's listening away.
I was never as big a fan of theirs as you, Kurt. So you were really pleased when you first heard them in this episode. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it was a joy to hear. I was like jumping for joy when I heard it. So it was great. Nice. Yeah,
I'm glad it made you happy. Sincerely.
Yeah. But it was probably because it was raining.
Hey, you're good. You're good.
Sarah, any final thoughts?
No. Like you said, I think it would be fun to see maybe William and Demon Baby could be buddies and buddy up. Their superpowers in the comic book. Be interesting.
Now there's a bit of fan fiction for you. Okay, then let's dive into the mailbag and see what we've got in on there. So we should do that right now. Right, so Tony's been on. He says, this has to be up there with the episodes of the show I've watched the least. In all honesty, it never worked for me, really, despite the big star casting of Bruce Campbell. From what I recall of it, there's a tonal imbalance of comedy and overblown demonic horror, a weird spender carry-over that just feels pointless, and a little interesting modern Scully material of interest. Quite a bland episode in the context of season 6.
I didn't mind the Spender appearance, but otherwise I agree with Tony, to be honest, which is good because we don't always see eye to eye necessarily. But on this one, I'm fully behind our dear departed leader.
Okay, so we also went into the Xcast quarantine comments as well.
We all forgot to post the mailbag until too late. Is the background. So,
yeah. So, sorry, folks. Sorry, but we've gone back to the Xcast quarantine, which there was a few comments on it, so we'll go through them. Michael Little said that I enjoy this episode. Bruce Campbell, Rob Bowman, and David Duchovny do fine work here. Mulder stalking the suspect is always good for a laugh. There are some nice scenes and sequences. Still, we haven't gotten a proper X-File since Drive, and that's an unfortunate trend.
Ooh, the whole issue of are these other episodes proper X-Files or not? That's an interesting one. I don't think this is as good as those earlier episodes like Triangle, The Dreamlands, or How the Ghost Stole Christmas, even if my preference generally is towards the darker stuff. But I think those episodes that came earlier are more effective at what they were trying to do than this one is, which is a bit of it falls short a bit for me. What do you reckon, Sarah?
Well, I think at this point in the season, you have to have one that's less. I mean, everything has been so high so far that at some point you've got to have one that's a little bit lower on the scale of quality. It's bound to happen eventually. So I think the fact that we got this far into the season with such great episodes is more of a blessing.
You know, as we've always said, a weak X-File is still a strong episode of TV in a lot of ways. So it's in context, it's probably not as bad as what we would make it out to be if you look at some of the other shows around at the time. Chris Knowles says, I like it a lot, except for the weak final shot.
So meaning her eyes, is that what he means? Yeah. That's
I think it must. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Ronald Wilson says supposedly set in my hometown, but obviously still filmed in sunny California. So we still get issues of location in the show in the LA years. And he also gave us something you mentioned before, Carchi, some of the iconic Mulder and Scully shots. So he's put a picture of them holding the guns out, the still images and stuff like that. So that's great. And Jeremy Daniels says, I like this one a lot, but I'm a sucker for the horror episodes and kind of old school EC Comics cheese. And Andrew Levitt says, at last a return to the norm of a good X-Files story. That said, I find the LA locales and casting of Bruce Campbell a detriment to the episode, but it would have worked much better in Vancouver. Maybe,
because it is quite sun-dappled, isn't it? Some of the daytime scenes. I think when it was nighttime stuff, it was quite effective. But I can see what they mean. And that's it. That's all we've got, folks. So I think overall, a decent episode. Yeah. Something that's we probably wouldn't rush to rewatch, but it's nice to do a bit of a closer eye on this episode. I would never skip this one. I don't think. Because, like I say, I always come back to it thinking, well, maybe this is an interesting story and everything. Maybe there's more to it than I remember. But I'm just continually slightly disappointed by it. But at the same time, I wouldn't I don't despise it. There is some good stuff here, and I wouldn't skip it. So, would you skip it, Sarah?
No.
In your season 6 watch, do you watch the entirety of season 6?
I skip Alpha and Trevor. I haven't seen those in a long time. So, yeah, I those are probably the only two I would skip in season 6.
Yeah. Okay.
And, the mythology. Anyways, yeah. I don't usually watch the beginning, to be honest. I skip that one.
Okay, so let's get some rehydration in ourselves. Seeing that, we've got through it. Let's put a note in our diaries not to do that again. But in the meantime, if anyone wants to get more Carl, where can they find you online, Carl? What are you up to? At CKJ Sweeney on Twitter, most obviously. Also, X-Files Basement, our group on Facebook. I enjoy being in there. And if in terms of podcasting, at Movie Palace Pod is my film podcast about classic Hollywood cinema, so people can check that out if they want to. That's about it, I think. Okay, Sarah, what have you up to? Have you had any interesting, exciting things happen to you in the recent history at all?
I do have a new book out. It's called Darkness Loves Company. So that's fun. And you can find that on Amazon, the Zon. You can also find me on Twitter, Sarah L. Blair. And I'm on Instagram on the XCast Pod. I run that. So I'm going to be posting some more stuff over there and chatting with people. I actually met a listener from Brazil messaged me, which was fun. We've been chatting. She's real sweet. And so that was a lot of fun. She found us on Spotify, so you can find us there, and she's been listening.
Good to know.
Binging the X-Cast, so that's fun.
Good to know there's somebody out there listening, isn't it? We're not just talking amongst ourselves. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to hear people's thoughts as well. So by all means, jump onto the basement, as Carl said. If you want to get in touch with Sarah, she's more than happy to listen to you rabble on the Instagram. So hopefully you'll get more of them, Sarah, and be a star. But you can find me on Twitter at rmuldrake. That's RMULDRAKE. And you can see me over on the Millennium podcast, which is at the Times Now pod. We're currently doing season 3, running alongside season 6 of the X-Files. So I'm just over on there every Monday. So you can find me on there. You can also find me on the Red Dwarf podcast at Shipwrecked and Comatose. And you can find that at Red Dwarf Pod. And we should be starting to look into some more Star Trek Picard stuff as well over on Make It So. And you can find that on Twitter at Jean-Luc Podard. But that brings the episode to an end. Thank you both for letting me host this week. And no doubt we'll be together before the end of the season again. So it's going to be great fun. Yeah. Someone else can take the hosting chair.
And I think there are a couple of episodes where it'll be you and Sarah or me and you, Kurt, as well. So
absolutely. I think me and you, Carl, are covering Monday, I think. So that'll be looking forward to that one. So until next time, everyone, remember, trust no one.
Elsewhere on We Made This. Cerebral Jukebox.
I think as I've got older, I don't care what people think of my music taste anymore. I'm happy to admit that, I really missed the boat because, in the 2000s, I was really angsty teen and I was Papa Roach and Linkin Park on the daily. And I'd be ashamed to admit that I kind of like Savage Garden and Craig David, and I had this very strange diet. But now I go back and listen to all these 2000s UK garage tracks, and they were absolutely astounding.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast.
Maybe I'm not coming at it from an educated point of view because, not only am I a man, I'm gay. I don't deal with pregnancy.
Are you?
And
have you ever told us that before?
I was trying to make a serious point.
Hey, we love you, you know that.
Yeah. But you've got a good point, Colin. This is a bit of a sausage fest episode. Maybe we should have got a lady involved.
The Movie Palace.
This is a film you'd seen before we decided to discuss these two. Is that right? This was a rewatch for you?
No, this was a first-time viewing. Bells of St. Mary's, I watched for the first time last Christmas and really enjoyed it. And I had heard many things about the first one, especially how it had, swept at the Oscars, but I had never watched it. So when we started to discuss, a film to talk about for the holidays, I thought this is a great excuse to watch the first one.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network. The X-Cast and X-Files podcast was created by Tony Black and is produced and hosted by Carl Sweeney, Sarah Blair and Kurt North.
You can find the podcast on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook by typing in the X-Cast, and in our group, X-Files Basement, the X-Cast podcast fan group, and on Instagram at the X-Cast pod.
Don't forget, you can support the show by becoming a member on Patreon. Our patrons get early access to episodes, behind-the-scenes chats with our hosts and a thriving community of X-Files, and other premium interviews and specials. To find out more and subscribe, you can go to patreon.com/thexcast. That's patreon.com/thexcast.
We are also part of the We Made This podcast network, full of popular culture shows, including our Millennium series, The Time Is Now. You can find all of our shows at our website, wemadethispod.com, or via Twitter at wemadethispod.
Thanks for listening and keep watching the skies.